I will start. There you go. So if you would mute your sessions, please. And if you don't want to be on the video, you can turn off your camera. And another great turnout, about 47 people at this point, and I'm sure there'll be some others dropping in. So hi, everyone. I think most of you, if not everyone, knows who I am, but I'll tell you anyway. I'm Randy Atwood, president. And tonight we have a special treat. We're going to be reliving yesterday's amazing solar eclipse. And it was really great to see all the reports and all the pictures online during the day yesterday when everyone was sort of sleepwalking. And so now we're just, we've got 7 reports, I think. And a lot of people who wanted to present but weren't able to come to the meeting, we'll give them another opportunity next month to report. So maybe we'll have a couple a couple eclipse sessions. So I will ask our first presenter, Bhavi Vignesh, is going to give her first presentation to the center. And Bhavi, if you want to share your screen.
Sure.
Should be able to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
So happy to be here today.
Sorry? Oh, okay.
I'm so happy to be here today.
Oh, we're very glad you're here too. That's great.
Okay, is my screen visible?
It's perfect.
Okay, hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the solar eclipse. So let's get rolling. So probably most of you don't know me. My name is Bhavishya or Bhavi. I'm a space and science enthusiast. I really love coding and taking pictures of the sky or astrophotography, and I really like tech too. I am a RASC member, and RASC was the actual reason that I knew there was a solar eclipse. Now, what is a solar eclipse? A solar eclipse happens when the moon moves between the sun and the earth, casting a shadow on the earth, fully or partially blocking the sun's light in some areas. But the one that we experienced is called an annular solar eclipse. We will learn more about that in the next slide. Types of solar eclipses. Now there are 3 types of solar eclipses. We have total, partial, and annular, which is the one that we saw. First, we have the total solar eclipse. It's the most coolest one in my opinion. The entire sun is covered for a few minutes and it becomes very dark outside because the moon is covering the sun's light. Then we have the partial solar eclipse. The partial solar eclipse only happens when the moon comes between the sun and the earth, but the moon only partially covers the sun's disk. During a partial solar eclipse, the moon, the sun, and earth don't align in a perfectly straight line, and the moon casts only the outer part of its shadow. Now, during the annular solar eclipse, which is the one that we saw, the moon is far enough away from Earth that the moon appears smaller than the sky. Since the moon does not block the entire view of the sun, it will look like a dark disk on top of a larger bright disk. This creates what looks like the ring of fire around the moon. Okay, so these should be the phases. So this is how it should look before the eclipse. It'll look like a normal sunrise, and then the eclipse begins and you can see the moon's shadow. And now it kind of looks like the crescent moon. And now this is where the annular solar eclipse begins. You can see the ring of fire in donut shape. And this is actually the part where I saw because the rest was covered in the clouds, but it was really cool to see, and it was my first solar eclipse. And this eclipse ends, and after the eclipse, it just looks like the regular sun. So these are the pictures I took. I actually went to a lake and I managed to capture the sunrise, and it's actually my first eclipse too, and these are the pictures that I took. As I said, I could only see the eclipse after like a couple phases passed away, so I managed to take these with my solar glasses. So thanks for listening, and remember to space on.
Thank you very much, Bhavi. Any questions for Bhavi? Yes. Clap, clap.
Well done.
Thank you.
Just, you can unmute, and if you have a question for Bobby.
Hi, Bobby. What did you take the pictures with your phone?
Yes, we use my mom's phone, and also I tried taking a picture through the telescope, but with the lenses, but we couldn't exactly focus it into the correct point.
Ah, great. Thank you.
Bobby, where were you observing from?
It was Tenary Lake, I think. It's quite near my house, actually.
Mhm.
So that's Oakville, right? Tannery Park in Oakville?
Yes, it's in Oakville.
Right. I think a lot of people were there. That's good.
Yeah, we managed to get into like a less crowded spot. in
Oh,
the lake.
good.
Yeah.
Good.
It was a bit crowded.
Okay, thanks again, Bobby. And before the meeting, we were talking a little bit about seeing another eclipse, and there's another annular eclipse in the United States in a couple of years. So I'm sure a lot of us will be heading down to see that. Next speaker is Gary Crawford, who is not in grade 4, I don't think, but
I was. I vaguely remember it, but I don't remember having me or any of my classmates being quite as advanced as Bobby is. So there's real hope for the future here. Really enjoyed that. That's a great setup for all these talks. So that was fantastic. Really appreciate it. So let me share my screen and before I share my experience here. So let me share my presentation here. Let me get it running. So you're good there?
looks good.
Okay, so knowing that some of the main locations would be a bit crowded, I decided to scope out, no pun intended, a location that I thought I'd be the only one who knew about. So I planned this out very carefully, and it's at Water's Edge Park in Mississauga. So it's really just south of Bradley Museum, if you know that location. It almost looks like the Caribbean with that beautiful water there, and I can attest to the fact that that water is pretty nice. I actually paddleboard and I try to surf along that shoreline at times, and it's a great place in the summer, I've got to tell you. Water's Edge Park, I guess the city was running out of names when they came up with that, but anyway, there's the red star marks about where I set up my camera, but just really quickly, there were some emails before the eclipse about people asking for great locations, and I just thought I'd show this to people. For many of you probably know all about this, but if you don't, it's a really useful tool. I use photo ephemeris. I've been using it for years in my photography in general, but it's really great for astrophotography, for solar, lunar kinds of events. And so you drag that pin to your location, and it tells you where the sun's rising, setting, the moon's rising and setting, and the times along the bottom. It's really, really useful. So I was able to put a pin on that park, and you can see the line going right through the Toronto Islands, and it's actually pretty accurate. So that's why I set up here, and then there's that morning shot. You can see that little box below my camera. That's where I keep my solar filter. So I shot for a while without the solar filter, and then I added it partway through. But I mean, absolutely idyllic setting. But I wasn't the only one there. There were quite a few people there, and by the time the eclipse hit, there might have been 30 or so people there, but there's lots of space, and it was quite nice. And there's the location. A lot of people just came out to sit and watch. Which I thought was really quite nice. And what I do to get set up is that I like to focus on a pinpoint of light. Unfortunately, it's a great time of day, and I got this bonus shot, and so I focused on the city lights to get everything focused properly. And then this was the moment when we knew it was about to begin. You can see that shaft of light coming up and the sun's coming through. And I think we were all waiting to see the extent to which the eclipse would be visible when we had all those clouds. But fortunately, it really came through. So I started shooting a sequence, just hoping I wouldn't miss anything. And I set it at a fairly, well, about a 300th of a second, because if there are going to be some birds flying through, I wanted to sort of catch them. And so there's the sequence. And this is the one that was the keeper. And I'm really happy with the way that turned out. And thankfully, these birds cooperate. As I told someone on Facebook, I said, at least these birds are a little easier to deal with than trying to herd cats, which was part of my job for many years as an administrator in the university, but that's another story. So what I did was I did a couple of things. So I was shooting those single shots. And then once the sun got to a point of a little more clarity, I shot it at 2-minute intervals, because 2 minutes is about the time it takes for the sun to travel one solar disk diameter. So this is just 3 shots right here. It's 1, 2, and 3, and you can see how much they move in that over those 6 minutes really there. So that's what I did. And so with that, I sort of thought maybe I'd do a time lapse, but actually this was more how I wanted to put this together. And I noticed, I don't know, my screen, this isn't the way the original photograph looks, but there's some artifacts in these images that shouldn't be there. But at any rate, I started putting this sequence together as just just the creative aspect of this developed as I put it together. And essentially what happened here was that I wanted to confine the sequence to this rectangle. And I thought maybe an S form for solar eclipse might be a good way to do it. So you can see that there's color up to the first curve in the S. And I shot for about half an hour without a solar filter, and I had to adjust and keep adjusting the exposure until a point where the camera really wasn't compensating properly. So then I put the solar filter on to finish the whole image. And you can see how the geometry changes. You can almost see the way the sun has rotated by the top of the S. And anyway, that was a good fun to put together in Photoshop. I just simply used a script that opened every single shot as a layer and switched the layering to lighten, and then adjusted each individual picture afterwards. I didn't do any editing beforehand. I did it afterwards. Whoops. Oops. Yeah. So really, that's my presentation in a nutshell. So that was my experience. One anecdote about this was that there was a gentleman who lived across the street. So if I can just put this back on, I think I'm still sharing. So gentleman who lived in this house, I guess all the cars were parked here, and he came out and he just simply asked, "What's going on?" I didn't think anyone didn't have the message, but he came out and said, "So what's going on?" And when I told him what was going on, he stayed and watched the eclipse with the rest of us. But he said most mornings, no one's there. He meditates there every morning. And I guess we had taken up his space. But in the end, I think he's a convert, and he'll be keeping an eye on these eclipses from now on. So there you go.
Thanks, Gary. Those are awesome. I really like the effect. Any questions for Gary?
Hi, Gary. Swapna here. The S shape, it's amazing. And I know you touched on it, but how did you get it to get into that S shape?
Right. So what I did was that I made each image. So I opened all of those images as layers in Photoshop. So then it was sort of one image for me to start editing with all of those images stacked into it. And then I had to make sure they were all in the right order. And then I used the lighten blend on it and was able to then see all the pictures at once. And once each of the layers was visible, I could then start adjusting each individual picture. And I just sort of manually, by eye, I didn't draw anything. I just sort of manually put it together in that S. And in the end, I guess I was as pleasantly surprised with the final product as a lot of people who have seen it were, especially the way the color blended. It almost looks a little bit like calligraphy. I wish I could say that I had planned that from the outset, but sometimes things just work out. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful comes to mind.
Thank you.
Gary, if you mentioned it, I'm sorry I missed it. I was wondering what you were using to shoot that.
Oh, right. No, I didn't mention that. So I use my Nikon D850, and I have a Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter lens, and I pretty much zoomed it out to 150 millimeter, 600 millimeters for that shot, for all of each of those shots.
Very nice. Any other questions for Gary?
Yes, Gary, there were lots of people looking at this, watching this eclipse right along with you, and including the neighbor that walked across the street.
Yes.
This is a particularly dangerous eclipse for eyes. Were they using filters?
They were. Most people brought the solar glasses.
Okay.
And
okay.
Every single photographer had a filter.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who didn't have proper eyepiece, who sort of just stumbled upon this, I just invited them to look at the back of my camera to observe rather than look at the sun. They seem to be aware of that. One lady came relatively unprepared. She had dark sunglasses and she was shooting with her phone. And she managed to get, actually it was interesting because she said the images she was taking were all washed out, but there was glare in her photos that actually showed the eclipse. So the glare had the eclipse, but her photo was washed. It was interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I did see several examples of that, and you may have even seen that with shooting the moon or whatever. And you can always tell it's lens flare because the image of the sun and the overexposed image of the sun are, if you draw a straight line in between them, they go right through the center of the field of view, and they're both equally distant away. So it's internal reflection. Sometimes you overexpose and you get a nice result.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Leslie Strike.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience on this eclipse. I had decided fairly early on that I was not going to go near a lake because I expected tons of people to be there. And I'm so used to staying 6 feet away from people that, you know, I'm nervous about that. So I did some preliminary kind of reconnaissance, if you want. I live in the Erin Mills part of Mississauga, which unfortunately has far too many trees for this kind of thing. But I went out into Oakville and into the farmers' fields, but there was nowhere I could pull my car off the road to be safe. So in the end, I ended up taking the picture right outside my house. And luckily, using, you know, I used photo pills instead of the one that Gary used, but the same thing, I could see where my line was straight over the soccer field, over the school parking lots, quite a distance, but not to the horizon. So I kind of knew that I wasn't going to get, you know, the sun coming up. And so from that, then I started planning. And I'm going to try to share my screen here. And we'll see what happens. Okay. Okay. So I have been to several total solar eclipses. And usually partway through the partial phases, I take a picture. One kind of picture only, because when you're at a total eclipse, the partial phases are kind of like the warm-up band before the, big star comes on the stage. So I thought, this is what I'm going to end up taking because, I don't have a pure horizon view, is going to be really a partial phase. So I went looking through my pictures to try to see what they would like and what kind of settings I should use. And this is typical of the 4 or 5 that I have. This was from Ternate in Indonesia. And it was taken, though, at nearly 11 o'clock in the day. And you can see how white the sun is. So I was kind of thinking, I know this is sunrise. It's not going to be quite that white. But anyway, I looked at that and kind of used that to start. And then I went outside, and this is the view across my fields and my parking lot. And then you can see that awful cloud there. So it was a while before I could even see the sun in my solar glasses, let alone take a picture of it. But eventually,
Leslie,
I actually
sorry to
got it.
interrupt. We still see the partial.
Yeah.
We still see the image of the partial.
So there is what I got. And I was so surprised to see the color. And you can see the bands of clouds on this sun. And I wasn't expecting this at all.
Laurie, Leslie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we still see your first picture.
You do? Yeah. Did it change?
No, still the...
I think you have to share the image. The way you're doing it, you'll have to share
Lord.
the image that you want to show.
Pause, bring my shared window. Well, how did this happen? Bring my shared window to the front. All right, just a minute. I have problems with this. Sharing is paused. Stop the share. So am I going to have to do this for picture by picture?
As long as you're sharing the screen.
But because it shows on my screen perfectly.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Very interesting. Okay.
Share the application you're using.
Share the application.
I think the application pops up each photo as in a separate window, and Zoom is.
It does.
Yeah, and
Right.
Zoom is not tracking that. So just share each one. That's
Okay.
fine.
It's just going to be, all right, so let me do this. All right. So now you can't see that yet, eh? When I go full screen, I lose my share business. So, but you saw the first one.
Yes.
Wait a minute, I've got this at the bottom. Did I go back to the first? What do you see now?
We don't see anything shared at all. We just see the participants.
Oh man, all right. Just a minute. I'm gonna try something else.
Okay, Leslie, based on the last time we did this, I know that Google lets us edit out large sections of video.
Good. Because I've run into trouble with this. I don't have a good browser, a picture browser that seems to work. So.
Can you just open one picture and then just share that particular screen? Let's see if that works.
Just a minute, let me get out of here. Yes, because this is, and I have no way of really testing this, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let me just pull up a Finder window. What are you seeing now, just so I know what you're seeing?
You haven't started to share yet.
All right. So, but you did see the first picture, right?
Yeah, we saw all of the pictures, and then we saw
the first one.
Shows, but then it never went back.
Okay. All right, then I know what I can do. All right,
Is there a view in the application where you can see all of the images, but they're larger than they were in the
No.
initial view? Oh,
No, the only thing I can do is go full screen, and then I'm in trouble, right? Because I can't see anything.
Okay.
All right, can you see this now? Can you see my picture here?
No.
Leslie, maybe if you hand the screen share back to somebody else and then log in again with your next photo, it might work.
All right, let me share the screen. So, all right, I can do it this way, I think. Now what do you see, if anything?
We're still,
Nothing?
still not seeing it.
So, okay, just a minute. Gotta get rid of this. Gotta get rid of this. This is just very, very annoying, to say the least. See, now it doesn't have my screen up there. Okay, I got to stop this while I get this back to where it needs to be. I apologize, people. I've got to find a browser that works properly with this, because this one obviously does not.
Okay. How many pictures do you have?
I have 6.
Can you just email them to Alan?
I could do that.
So why don't we'll go to another speaker and then, does that work, Alan?
Yep. Works for me.
Okay.
All right. So we'll come back to Leslie's.
Yeah, I apologize. If I could test this somehow, it would be a lot easier, but.
Okay. Well, we can just set up another sessions anytime you want. We can play around with it.
Because it's just so frustrating.
Oh, I know. It's unforgiving sometimes. Okay.
All right.
So we'll put that presentation on pause and pass things over to Chris and Liz, the tag team Eclipsers.
All right. I need an email.
I'm going to mute you, Leslie.
Yes, please do.
So much swearing.
Chris and Liz are going to have to unmute at some point, unless they're going to do hand signals.
Oh, okay.
Share screen.
How's that?
No,
No.
not on yet.
Okay. Oh, it looks like we're not the only
No,
ones.
there we go.
Okay.
Share.
Okay.
Can you see our first picture?
Yes, and it's beautiful.
Okay, that's Liz's
Perfect.
picture.
Okay. Okay. First of all, Randy, I want to thank you for your invitation to discuss my ecliptic images. At first I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to say to these astronomy aficionados? They know so much both scientifically and technically, but then everybody comes to the table with their own perspectives. And for all of those eclipses that I've witnessed, probably what I love is focusing in on the light and the dark. It's always intrigued me. And these are what my pictures are going to focus on, is how this wonderful universe paints us such a beautiful eclipse using ecliptic light and shadow. And yeah, maybe I've just taken too many art courses over Zoom, so that's where my mindset is at. All right, so it is 5:40 Thursday morning. We're standing in Rattray Marsh, and Chris chose this position or sighting for a specific reason. So Chris, why don't you explain?
Well, we wanted to go to Northern Ontario to see the annular eclipse of the sun. However, the sun would not be higher than 2 degrees. And in Northern Ontario, there's trees and it would be almost impossible to get a horizon. And then COVID hit and it became especially bad in Northern Ontario. So we decided we would go to the lake. It's very close to us. I made a calculation that from Rattray Marsh, which is a really nice place that we go to all the time, we would see the sun rising over Center Island. And we didn't know exactly which spot it would be. It'll be interesting to see exactly where it comes up when we show our next pictures. And we were on a sort of a promontory overlooking the lake. There was a bench there, trees all around, and there was 5 of us. And it was a really private spot with no other people.
Okay, so in my hand, I have a Nikon camera. It's focused on our panorama here across the waters of Lake Ontario. The setting is on automatic. There is no filter. But for me, that really wasn't good enough because I wanted to see the drama. So I take my camera and I simply put on manual, and there's a little knob on my camera that goes up and down, and all I did was just turn that little knob, and now we're going to go to the images.
Yeah, the knob gave you different times, like 1 1000, 1 2000, 1 400.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
there it is.
So to me, this was drama, and here, I just loved the presence of this sundog. If you take a look on the furthest part of this horizon, you can spy with your eye, you can see actually 3 chimneys. And as I go through my images, you will see that this sundog gradually moves past those chimneys to the right. All right, those are our reference points as we get deeper into this eclipse. Here we are approaching this past the 2nd chimney. Next. And of course, very close to the 3rd chimney. And what you notice is way off in the distance, you see that the horns are beginning to show themselves. Yes.
I want to make a comment. We weren't that far away from Gary. We're only a few kilometers farther east. His sun rose quite a bit to the right of that tallest chimney. Our sun rose right on that chimney. We didn't know that that would happen. It was just sort of a quirk, like the chimney was between the 2 solar horns or solar cusps.
And of course, no filter, no nothing. I just clicked, and I know it was getting to the dangerous point, but couldn't resist.
Yeah, you had a handheld Nikon DSLR. That's what you were using.
Yeah. And this is what I find so dramatic about any type of eclipse. The light that is projected during this time bounces off of very interesting objects around us. And here you see the illumination of the windows in the far off buildings to our left. And of course, me being a gardener, I could not resist the illumination on these grasses, as well as the illumination on the barks, on the trunks of these trees. They were really quite dramatic. This was at the time where there was twilight, an eerie kind of a twilight occurring. I just love this. I just love this. And so,
we're very used to seeing the eclipse look. We've seen many solar eclipses, and when the sun is 80% covered, you get this eclipse look. Things just aren't natural. And it's really interesting. At sunrise, it's getting brighter, and then suddenly the sun is coming up and it's not getting brighter. It's staying rather dull and very like weird type of coloration. I certainly noticed that, and the photos maybe showed or not, but like it was very obvious to me.
Okay.
So the 5 of us, I had a teleview with a solar filter. I used it strictly for observing, and all 5 of us were all family members. We used this. Liz's brother, Mike, who, by the way, Randy, was in Gimli, Manitoba with us. He took cell phone pictures. That's one of his shots. My 2 nephews, I invited them to come in. They were very enthusiastic. They were using, we all had a number of binoculars filtered and a naked eye filter. So that's what they're using there. So that was a nice group of 5 of us. We've all had our vaccines. It was safe. There was no other people. It was just a beautiful location to watch it from. So I had a Canon with a zoom lens, 300 millimeters, unfiltered. My focus isn't perfect, but you could see that the sun is rising right at that big second chimney, and that's the right horn. And there it is just a little bit later, and now it's gone above that little cloud layer, and the left lower fainter horn is touching the chimney. And I just shot a number of pictures. I really liked the clouds, added a lot of drama and color, which I really liked. And just got a few of these, and I think that might be my last shot. And yeah, that's my last shot. So thanks for listening to our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chris and Liz. Any questions?
I have to stop share screen.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that was an interesting and different perspective, Liz. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Were there many animals around where you were? We had a lot of geese and strange things.
Oh, birds, geese.
Yeah,
Surfboard. There were
Yeah.
surfboarders there.
yeah, out on the
They're
lake.
not necessarily
Yeah.
animals. We were very close to Jose Alonso. I thought we were almost going to observe with Jose. He was like just a few hundred meters from us, but like logistically and time-wise, we just didn't have enough chance to meet up with him. So I think he saw these surfboarders who were on the lake, probably watching naked eye the eclipse.
Yeah, there were a couple of joggers who jogged the path behind us. I didn't think that they really knew what was going on, but they didn't stop. So it was just private.
Yeah.
That was the really nice thing about it. It was private. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing that. That sounds like you had a great
It was great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Beulah has a question. Where's the full eclipse? Was it not visible in Ontario? Yes, it was, but in far northeast of Thunder Bay and Sault Ste. Marie, and so not many people, if any, went up there. But I have seen some pictures from the far north where they had a little bit of cloud, but a few of them have shown up on the social media. So. Okay, Leslie, do you want to continue your presentation with your partner now?
With my partner now, yes. So you saw this picture before, right?
Yes.
And this was my explanation of like kind of what I was expecting. So moving on, Alan. When I went out, this is my viewpoint over my, fields and my parking lots, and you can see the cloud bands there that everybody ran into. And luckily, the eclipse was coming up just, over above the where the light stand is there, the second light stand. So it took a while for it to get up to where I could actually photograph it. But I used a filter. I have a Canon camera. I used a 250 millimeter lens. I started out with the same settings that I had used in the other ones, but quickly realized that there was not enough light. And so I changed them. And then I got the next picture, Alan, please. And this is what I got with the light and the little clouds. And, it's not white and it's not yellow. It's just this beautiful mixture of colors. And so that was a few minutes into the eclipse. And then, Alan, the next one, which is a few minutes more, the top one, not the bottom one. And you can kind of see that there is a cloud band here. And I noticed in someone else's picture, there was the same cloud band. And it just, to me, was just beautiful, right? And then, you know, a few more minutes later, we were up to, you know, again, still orange, but outside of the clouds by now. And then, you know, about an hour, well, 40 minutes later, we ended up with this. And all the color, not all the color, but a lot of the color is gone. This is 624 or so. And so it's not white like the ones that I have taken before at, you know, 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning. It's still got that yellow tinge. So that was kind of nice. It was just beautiful. I was by myself. There was no one else there. There were a few joggers out. They didn't stop to ask me what I was doing. No one bothered me. So it was very peaceful from that point of view. And I was just tickled pink when I saw the color in those pictures, because I was not expecting that at all. So that's my story. And I apologize to everybody for this mess. I will figure out, I will get a browser that works with Zoom for these images somehow. Maybe we can talk later, Randy, since you have a Mac.
Yeah, sure. No worries. We'll figure it out. Okay, thank you, Leslie. So this last one, that's definitely with a filter. What kind of filter do you have?
This is, it's a Mylar filter, a proper solar filter.
Okay.
All of them were taken with solar filters except the one of the landscape.
Right, right. Okay, excellent. Any questions for Leslie? Okay, thanks again. Our next speaker is Swapna.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Beautiful photos, everybody. Randy, you can see my presentation coming up?
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. Okay, all right. So a lot's been already talked about. So I will let you know my presentation is not about photos, because actually we just enjoyed the visual experience. So I want to share that with you today. So we are here in the GTA. And just to let you know, I did a little bit of research. This was my first annular solar eclipse. I've seen a full back in 2017, and I look forward to the next one in 2024. We got 86% coverage. Our eclipse started around the 5:40 a.m. mark and ended around the 6:40 a.m. mark, so, and very close to sunset. I was actually very excited. I wasn't sure if I was going to actually get up in the morning because of work, and plus I'm not really a morning person. But I have to say, with all the emails that I got from the membership, I had no choice but to get up and more importantly, wake my husband up, and the two of us went down to the Oakville Harbor to take a look at the eclipse. And I think, Bobby, you were there too. We just didn't see each other there. So in terms of the preparations, so I want to talk about our preparations and what we went through. Like I said, first annular solar eclipse, we didn't know where to go. I had to ask a few people, but because of the membership and all the great ideas that were coming through emails the previous night, at about 11 o'clock the previous night, we decided to go to the Tenary Park in Oakville. And I believe Brian is the one who shared the photo ephemeris. I don't know how to pronounce it. And look at the angle. It's about, the sun was about at a 56-degree angle right over the lake, which told me that I would get a very nice view had I gone down to the lake like most people. So what we did is, the reason we chose Tenary Park is primarily because of the parking spots. And I think Phil mentioned in his email that there was quite a few amount of parking spots, and that's of course important. Dennis also mentioned to me, he says, make sure you bring a chair because there's not enough seating, and that was a great tip because we did land up staying in the park for about just under an hour. So that was our preparation. So location, I would say. So what did we do the morning of 10th of June? First of all, we set our alarm at 4:30, giving us enough time to get to the the lake's only 15 minutes away, but just wanted to make sure we got there. We made sure that we had a chair, like Dennis had mentioned. He said, let's make sure you bring a chair. So we did. And then we wanted to make sure, because we were going to be visual observers, we wanted to make sure we had ISO certified solar eclipse glasses. So we had a pair for me and a pair for my husband. And I didn't take photos because I'm actually not equipped to do any solar photography. Something I think I need to learn from the membership at RASC here. But clearly a sad moment for me, because I couldn't actually take any photos of the eclipse itself. Later on, somebody told me, oh, you could have put your iPhone behind the solar eclipse. So we'll try that in 2024. I will use a solar eclipse and put my iPhone behind it, or I will invest in proper gear. We'll see. We have 3 years to figure that out. So at Tenary Park, and you've seen this image in several of the photos that have been shown. I was pleasantly surprised at how many people were out, and I was so excited to see the interest in astronomy and sun relations, and just from people. And I don't believe, and I don't know if they were part of RASC or any other astronomy club, but there were quite a few people on the pier. That pier in front was actually across from us. There's 2 areas you can actually get right into the water, and you see that the sun is right there. And that was we arrived at about 5:20. We set up our chairs. We saw quite a few people. There's a little bit of a hill on the Tenary Park area. There were people standing up, and some very sophisticated cameras. Camera equipment was also seen, with people. The one thing I observed, though, and my husband and I were talking about it, most people did not have sun protection, eye protection. So that was a little bit, worrisome. But in any case, that's an observation. So about 5:35, the sun is peeking out, as you can see, and clouds on the horizon. And we're like, oh, okay, are we going to actually see something? We try on our sunglasses, our solar eclipse glasses, and we can't see a thing. It's so dark, you can't see a thing through it. But then as 5:40 started coming on, more and more light started coming through. And then we noticed a slight sliver through the solar glasses, which told us that you could actually see the sun a little bit. And then the sliver turned brighter and then turned into a crescent. And then you could actually start seeing that moon shadow like you saw in the previous presentations. And then we saw it, and we continued to see the sun emerge from behind the moon, and the moon kind of moving. At one point, we actually had to abandon our post because we were not properly dressed for the cold breeze that was flowing through. It was very, very breezy at this particular point. So we actually went back to our car, and we were able to enjoy the rest of the show just from the warmth of our car. It was direct line to this solar eclipse. And at around 6:30, we said, okay, unfortunately it's a work day, we have to get home. The rest of the day we were zombies walking around and trying to stay focused on work. But all in all, we had a gorgeous time there. I also wanted to bring your attention to the photo that's in the insert here. This is my husband's photo, and no, this is not from Star Wars. This is a close-up of those 2 people that are standing by the pillar, but to us, it looked like a Star Wars picture. But in any case, we had a fantastic time. Very, very surprised to see the enthusiasm in the people, the chatter, especially in the COVID moments that we're going through, just the excitement that people had, and all the wows and that were coming out of people's mouths around us. It was just such a beautiful day. Tons of birds, and you'll see that in the picture over here. We had tons and tons of birds around. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Swapna? Very nice. Yeah, it's always nice to get descriptions from people who are at different places and just the different perspectives on this eclipse. And a lot of people saw many different things, so that's neat. I like that. Okay, if there are no questions, thanks again, Swapna. And our next speaker is David Maynard. You are up, sir.
Hello. All righty. Let me share my screen, and I'm going to share this one. So I'd like to thank Thomas for posting this location. This is right at the mouth of the Credit River, and when I saw a sample of the pictures taken from there, I thought, you know what, that is perfect. So I set up my tripod and my Canon T6 with the 70 to 210 lens there. And I got there awfully early because I was coming down from Brampton and didn't take, I allowed too much time for traffic. You know what? There's nobody on the road at 4:45 in the morning. So made it there nice and early, got set up, and glad I brought my extra coat because being right by Lake Ontario was a wee bit chilly. So let me stop sharing this and then share. Okay, share screen, thank you. So let me go to my photos. So when I got set up and looked over where the skyline, I looked at that and I went, wow, look at the colors that are all there. So so I looked at that and I experimented with different settings on the camera. And this one was actually taken no filter, and it was done with the camera's fully automatic settings. That was the best one out of the bunch. So I was pretty impressed with that, thinking, okay, that's good. So I should be good to go. And just after I took this shot, Francis McBrien and his spouse showed up. And then I had the joy of ending up with Dr. Ralph Chu set up right beside me with all of his gear. And that he was just a wonderful wealth of information. I think he's seen about 70 some odd eclipses. So he was just great to be there. And by the way, Randy, Ralph says hi. So here's another one. This one I tried to set this manually, and I love how the birds cooperated. And in case you can't see right here, I need to clean a spot on the lens of my camera. And then here's another one. And as you can see, I'm going, okay, the sun's going to come up right here, but I was wrong. It's coming up here. We can see the first sundog. And I just love the colors. Because of the cloud cover, it was just amazing, just the depth of color. So there's a little more of the sun. And then up it pops, and then there we see a little bit of it. And I just kept on shooting pictures, just clicking the button, and it's like, look at all the birds. You know, they're all over here. And I think that it's just neat. A little more of the sun, more birds, more sun, more color. And then it kept on coming up. And I don't have a solar filter for the camera. So I flipped over to manual here, and I'm running at the lowest ASA setting at 1/4000th of a second exposure. And this is the best shot I got out of the whole bunch. So I was pretty impressed with that. And then things start getting brighter, and eventually the sun washes out. And that was my experience. So what I've learned from this, A, I need to clean my lens, and B, I need a solar filter. And just about this point, I started looking for my solar glasses. And of course, getting up at 4:30 in the morning, I obviously didn't bring them. But of course, Ralph Chu, being an optometrist and having written several articles on solar eclipse safety, immediately just whips out a pair and says, here, have these. So I got to thank him for allowing me to enjoy the rest of the eclipse with the solar glasses on. So obviously I'm not a good Boy Scout. I was not prepared, but the location and the colors were just amazing. So that was my experience.
All right, thanks, David. Yeah, say hi to Ralph when you see him. That's one thing I noticed too, is how dirty my, actually not my lens, but my sensor is. I thought so, but anyway, yeah, Ralph and I can go back a little bit. I think next year is marks the 50th anniversary of the first eclipse I saw with him. So time is moving on. Any questions for Mr. Maynard?
Yeah, David, if you could bring up your images again, the second to last or third to last image, you can see the internal reflection of the sun.
You certainly,
So go back one or two.
yeah, let me just move all the thumbnails. Yeah, there, you certainly can see it
Yeah,
there.
there. Isn't that neat?
Hmm.
I think that's a UFO.
Sure. Oh, yes, little green men are going to land soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks again. Again, any questions for David?
Well, thanks for you to putting this idea together. I can see that none of us would make any good witnesses for a crime scene, because I'm really pleased to see all the different perspectives on how we all saw this this event.
Yeah, no, it's nice that everyone sees something a little different or has a different experience, and for sure, every eclipse is different. So that's why you have to go see them all, I guess. Okay, the last speaker is yours truly. So I will share my screen. And do you have it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right. So Betty and I went down to Coronation Park in Oakville. So we were a little bit farther west than many of the people here have given talks. But yeah, we got down there with Jupiter and Saturn were still visible, and it was like everyone's place by the lake. It was quite pretty. So we were with Michael Watson and his wife Helen Howe, and many of you may remember Michael. He's given several talks at the center. I was using a Questar 3.5-inch telescope and a 200 millimeter lens, so I had a couple cameras going. So, like everyone else, we saw where the sun was going to rise. And the refraction of the light from the sun was rather interesting as sunrise got closer and closer. And what's interesting are these two points of light, and I'm wondering if they are from the two horns. So I'm not convinced. It might just be cloud below the horizon or whatever. But with the 200 millimeter, that'd be nice. 200 millimeter, bit of a different view as the horns began to rise. Some people have seen this. I posted this picture, and some people have mentioned that might be a double green flash. I'm not convinced. I like to think so, because I think it would be a unique thing to see sometimes at sunrise when the sun is very low or just below the horizon. You can get a greenish flash from the sun. But anyway, you can tell that the horns are coming. And again, back to the 200 millimeter, just, what people have mentioned today, the colors were spectacular. So now we get the first indication of a horn on the right. And again, is that greenish? I don't know. My eyes always play tricks when I look at it. But now both horns have cleared the horizon, and the trained seagulls have begun to move into my pictures, which is good. And a little bit more. And now the right horn has cleared the cloud bank, a little bit more. And this is something I put together, it has to be a couple years ago now, what the sun would look like at 5:40 in the morning on June 10th, and it's pretty close. So now we've cleared the clouds, and the seagulls are back. And these are all unfiltered. And I was playing with the ISO and the exposure, and started out, rather short exposure, and very quickly as the sun rose, wound through up to the point where I just couldn't make the exposure short enough without flaring, so I had to use a filter. It's interesting, a lot of the pictures, they starts out like this and it goes like that, and you get the impression that the whole sun was rotating, but it's just the moon moving essentially down and to the left. So the horn on the left begins to disappear and the horn on the right begins to get bigger, which gives the impression of the thing rotating. So this is getting close to solar filter time. And there I have my solar filter on. And I thought that was a sunspot during the eclipse, but I realize now that I need to clean my detector, my CCD. So these pictures, or this part of an eclipse, is generally the one that many people do not see. Don't hang around for the partial phases, but I thought I would do that, sort of complete the experience. And within an hour, the eclipse was over. Now, just to remind everybody, the path, which went through Northern Ontario and up through Greenland and over the North Pole and into Siberia. I actually saw some annular pictures from Siberia today, which is kind of cool. This showed up online today, some pictures of the eclipse from space, and I think they're out of order here. I've got a before and an after coming up, but this is also kind of neat. And if you look at the very top, you can actually see the shadow racing across the north towards the North Pole. So I think this would have to be enhanced a fair amount just to bring out the shadow. And just to remind everybody in I guess speeded up time, what the shadow would have looked like racing across the north part of the Earth. Okay, here's that other picture. This is the before picture. Essentially just about the time when we were watching the eclipse. So our horizon is right on the limb there. And okay, here's the second one at maximum eclipse, and the third one where you can just barely see the remnants of the shadow. And today, this showed up. Tim Hortons in Stonewall, Manitoba, has created solar eclipse donuts to celebrate the event. So I have no idea where that is. I'm afraid I didn't look it up, but hopefully some local Tims will make some solar eclipse donuts as well. And that's my presentation. So for any questions, let me know. I'll just mention now, quick announcements. Our next meeting at the end of the month has been canceled because of the General Assembly. There will be a lot of online things going on, so definitely sign up on rasc.2021ga.ca. And our next Potpourri meeting is July 16th. And with that, if anyone has any questions.
Hi, Randy. It's Eric Gunter here.
Hey, Eric. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. So yeah, I definitely have a question for you. So my experience was kind of similar to yours as far as the progression from just the raw camera shots to adding filters. But my filter setup was, I had one of my dad's Mylar filters that I was just holding in front of the objective on the DSLR, and then I had actually welder's glass that made for kind of very artistic pictures, if I may say so myself. I know I didn't have time to put together a presentation, but I'd be happy to throw them up on the screen if you have a minute. But I don't want to bomb your meeting here. Anyway, but my question is, I'm curious. When you started using the filters, you still have the color coming through. How does that work? Because when I put the filters in, the Mylar one, everything kind of goes to sort of a bluish white on black. So.
Yeah, the different filters give you different colors. So the filter I had was a glass filter, and they historically, and it's a rather old system. It's probably nearly 50-year-old telescope, but you can get glass filters today, and they will give you some will give you a whitish view, some will give you more towards an orangish view. The Mylar has generally historically been kind of a bluish result. So it's just the material. One thing with the Mylar, though, you have to be sure that no light can creep in and reflect off the Mylar. And so if I've used Mylar before, I've actually housed it into like a cell that will just fit right over the end of the objective, so that you can't, a nice snug fit, so that you can't get any light creeping in. Yeah, it is. It's well worth the expense to. You can actually buy these Mylar filters in specifically sized cells. So if you want them for binoculars, or if you want them for a certain size of objective, then you can get that. Does that help, Eric?
Yeah, it does. So the glass filter, is that something that it's a threaded on to the end of the?
This was threaded on. You can get them that will just sort of fit over the end of the objective of the telescope or whatever in a snug fit.
Right.
Although I've always just taken some duct tape and just made sure that thing wasn't going to come off, just because if it did, it would be a disaster for if anyone was looking through the telescope, or even if you had your camera. I don't know, maybe many people here have seen pictures of cameras that have been totally fried and melted just because the filter came off the telescope, because you're focusing so much heat into a small area, and it's instantaneous. So you've got to be very, very careful.
And is that the filter you're talking about, the threaded on glass filter, is that specifically for solar?
Yes, it's made by, it came with the telescope, made by the manufacturer.
Right.
But many telescopes these days don't offer the filter. You just get them as an accessory.
Okay, all right. And just to add my 2 cents as well about animals, was in a bit of a different situation from everybody who is lakeside. I live on a farm, and I went about a kilometer back into the back fields, and one thing that surprised me after standing in the same spot for about an hour is all of a sudden I'm surrounded by deer, wild turkeys, so a little different set of fauna. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. We'll always remember the eclipse that we were at in Mexico, and very close to the beginning of totality, and all we could hear were roosters crowing. So, and there have been cases where cows have walked back to the barn, and just the animals think it's nighttime. So that really wasn't so much the effect this time. Although I don't remember thinking that the sunrise was a little darker than normal, but then I'm not usually up that early watching the sunrise. I don't know if anyone else had that kind of perception that, hey, this sunrise is kind of darker than normal.
Okay, well, thank you, Randy.
Okay. Yeah, we will. I think we'll be able to have part 2 of the eclipse pictures next month, because I know that a lot of people who couldn't make it would still like to show their pictures. If you want to do that. Okay, any other questions or comments before we wind things up today?
Quick question, Randy.
Yeah.
You managed to get a shot that must have been really pushing the edge of your camera. What were you down to in terms of exposure time on your final shot?
I put the filter on when it just went up to 8,000th of a second and wouldn't go, and like the lowest ISO, and I was watching the meter. So the meter was telling me what was a good exposure, but I could see the exposure because of, you know, the digital camera. But once that meter began to go off the level, and I couldn't make the exposure any shorter, I called out, it's filter time, and I put the filter on. Yeah, that was a hard stop. I didn't have any choice.
It was pretty bright, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I began to wonder about heat.
Yeah.
But again, with a big difference between the sun, like 3 degrees above the horizon, compared to something that's, you know, 80 degrees above the horizon. So I wasn't really that concerned with the heat, because I really wasn't feeling much heat myself. So, but yeah, if playing around with, well, I guess if the sun was 80 degrees above the horizon, we wouldn't be shooting without a filter anyway. So.
Cool.
Okay, thanks, Alan.
Just to, if you're seeing very red color on my face and behind me, it's from the evening sun. Sun is about setting, so I thought I'll share that with you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Been drinking again.
Any other comments before we wind things up? John's got a note here. Oh, there was a question about how we see the recorded version. Yes, so John has mentioned there's a link in the official meeting announcement. And there is, yeah, just go to the video on our main menu, and that'll go, you can go to all.
Randy, I have a comment.
Yeah.
It should be possible to see a very young moon today, just below Venus. So shortly after sunset, find Venus, and to the lower right will be a really thin crescent moon that is like 1.5 days old.
Yes.
So it's probably worth trying for today if you have a clear sky. I don't have a clear one where I am, but maybe Sashi, maybe at your place it's clear and you could try that. Perhaps around 9:30 or 9:40 might be a good time to try for that.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very low moon though. But yeah, it's worth a shot if it's clear.
Well, Sky and Telescope is suggesting, like in their June magazine, to look for it today.
Yes.
That's why it made me think about it.
Yeah, no, because it'd be definitely a day and a half old, so it's doable.
Randy, Ron here, if I can put in a couple of comments.
Sure.
The site that Swapna observed from, I think, is the northern limit of the 2004 eclipse. And the other thing is, I so remember in Turkey, and Chris, you were there too, that the evening after the actual eclipse, as we were going to the restaurant, we could see the crescent moon in the sky, and it was so emotional to think that we saw that blocking the sun completely, and now we can see it as a crescent, and it was quite beautiful.
I've seen a few eclipses where, if they're early in the day, the following day in the evening, you could actually see the moon. So that's certainly a doable thing for today, I think.
I also think it depends on whether the moon is rising above the ecliptic or falling below the ecliptic in terms of it being visible.
Yeah, it'll be about the same, well, it's 2 weeks to the solstice, so it'll be pretty close. It'll be fairly flat, I think, latitude-wise.
I think John is looking for it now.
We're getting a feed from our roving reporter, John.
Yeah, actually.
Searching for the moon.
What direction? Clouds as well, too.
What direction?
Well, Beulah, look where the sun sets, and that's the moon will be setting pretty close to that, because
wow, yeah.
I think the latitude won't be too much different from the sun's latitude.
Okay, yeah, I will try that.
But you need a very, very low horizon.
Yeah, they recommend using binoculars to find Venus, and then go just to the 3 degrees lower right of Venus to find a very thin crescent moon today.
Right.
It's west, no, Beulah, it's west northwest. It's between that
All right.
direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. Thanks.
And thanks for the tip, Chris. I'm gonna go take a look if I can.
Yeah, it'd be great if somebody could see it and, you know, post that on the chat group, that if you manage that. I don't think I could do it from my house. My horizon isn't very good where I live.
Okay, well, this is great. Any other comments before we wrap things up? I see John is back in the studio now.
Just amazing evening, especially with the little one. I couldn't believe it. It was just amazing. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you all to all the presenters, and I'm sure we will have some more presentations next month. So look into registering for the General Assembly, and hopefully by Labor Day we'll be able to get together. Things are looking good. So take care, everybody, and this program will be up online sometime this weekend. So go out and look for Venus and the moon.
Thank you, Randy. Have a nice evening.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Have a great weekend.